you can put us on notice. I mean, you could tell us, hey, there's a grow here. I mean,
And then
we know there's lots of grows all over the place.
Then somebody makes a phony charge against them, and the little card you made out doesn't get together, and you show up with...
Every investigation is different.
Thanks, Larry. Thanks very much. We have an online question here from the Mail Tribune Live blog.
This is a question for me, actually for Leslie. Keep her awake there. Okay. My son goes to school in California, and we were down there, and I said, well, are there dispensaries around here? He said, sure there are. And I said, do you know where they are? And he goes, you can spot them because they're the ones that have the big guys standing at the door, kind of like bouncers who are security, I guess. So is it a security issue for you? Are you worried about being a target of crime as a dispensary?
Well, I run
within the state as a whole, beyond just you, but I mean other dispensaries, has it been a problem?
I can really only speak to mine. I run a small dispensary in a small town, so I haven't had any security type of issues. I have a security system, but I don't have a bouncer at the door. But I have been to some of the larger dispensaries in the cities, and they do always have a security guard there, but they carry a larger inventory, which could be worth tens of thousands. Maybe like a jewelry store would have some sort of a security guard.
Studies in California and in Colorado have shown that a dispensary is less likely to be robbed than a bank. It has the same sort of allure as a pharmacy, like, you know, where people go to steal OxyContins or whatever.
Those big guys at the door work, apparently, right?
Well, the Medical Act, or the 74 would require a security system. And it actually raises something that we hadn't talked about, which is a real positive role that law enforcement has played in enforcement of the Medical Act. I've certainly gotten calls where medical cannabis that's been stolen from gardens has been recovered by law enforcement. So it's not, you know, they are actually fighting some real crime.
Recovered and returned.
Yeah.
Okay, at the microphone.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the audience and the panel. My name is Michael Yaknowski, and I'm the Pope of Dope. I have a new religion, online church. The First Church of God SAP stands for God's Originally Designed Sacred Spiritual Awareness Plants, designed to propagate the religion of God SAP, which would hopefully in the future be a de facto legalization of marijuana for everyone who wishes to do so under a religious exemption. And I feel that this goes a little bit farther than what actions have been limited to right now, in that medical marijuana just doesn't go far enough for everybody. And it's a God-given drug. It's a plant drug that is God-given and is constitutionally mandated for our citizens to be able to use, because if you look at the evidence, the empirical evidence, there are addictive drugs now that are totally accepted. We have chocolate, we have sugar, we have caffeine in all of our sodas, and that's terribly addictive. It's far more addictive than many of the other prescription drugs that you can even get. So if we've already accepted that, why can't we accept having drug plants being sacred and being non-addictive and helpful to everybody? That's my goal. I want to know how many of you are interested in looking at my website. I have cards available for you.
All right, thanks, Michael. Leland, you're the attorney here. Can you tell us about religious exemptions?
Roger Christie from the THC Ministries in Hawaii is in federal custody facing indictment. There is case law from the Ninth Circuit, which includes Oregon, out of Puerto Rico, or not Puerto Rico, out of Guam, concerning Rastafarians and use. There was a case that went to the United States Supreme Court about ayahuasca, that where the government was enjoined from interfering with the importation of ayahuasca, which is basically
herbal tea, isn't it?
Well, it's herbal DMT is what it is, basically. And I mean, that's right. And so, but it's challenging. I mean, on the surface, it sort of makes sense. You seem like an earnest guy. It feels like it's your sacrament to you, you know, but in court, in Grants Pass, or in Medford, or in Roseburg, or in Coquille, or in Gold Beach, right? That's every place we're talking about here. I don't know that a judge would let you get to a jury about it. I really don't. And I'm pretty sure that in the federal court in Medford, they would not. So we're in this transitional phase around what is and is not religious use. I'd be glad to speak with you further about it afterwards, if you like.
Thank you, Michael.
very much. Another clarification point on the dispensary issue. Am I correct in what I heard, that you'll be limited as to the equality of 4 patients?
It would be
Yeah,
as if you were a grower for 4 patients, yes, that's the
Okay, you
limit.
couldn't carry any more than that.
Not at any given time, no.
All right, thanks again, Michael. Next person in line, please.
My name is Peter Dittler, and I'm from Grants Pass, Oregon. And to address the physician that made a remark about THC not being a painkiller, I think he's correct in that. But the CBD, which is cannabidiol, it's anecdotal information, but that is supposed to be a painkiller. And as a plant progresses in its maturity, the cannabidiol increases. But my question are to the law enforcement gentlemen, because I recognize that if this were hypothetically 1929, 1930, you gentlemen would recognize that any consumption of alcohol would also be against the law. And it would be rightfully your duty to enforce that. Isn't that correct?
Absolutely.
Yep.
If Godiva chocolate were suddenly made to be against the law, it would be both your gentlemen's responsibility to enforce that. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, in a movie right here in Ashland called Cash Crop, I just heard an interview with the sheriff of Mendocino County, a well-respected gentleman. And what he said was really interesting to me, and that's just why I want to query you law enforcement gentlemen. 30% of his law enforcement money was in busting people either smoking marijuana or growing it. And what he said was that these people really weren't doing any harm. He would rather take that 30% and go after the crack dealers, the child molesters, the wife beaters, and the drunks speeding on the road. So my question to you is, do you think that you could better be enforcing a set of laws that would be a little bit more applicable to the violence that's happening around us? Do you think that if marijuana were to be made legal, you guys would be free to go after some more serious crimes? If you don't...
Tim or Eric? Nobody's jumping at this one, I see.
That would be an opinion.
Your name
Tim's in
is
the opinion
crossed out,
business,
so...
I should have came on duty, then it would be,
Yeah.
it would be his opinion. We're not hurting for work, and there's no question about it. I mean, we, like I said, I wouldn't say that it's 30 or 35% of our work total for a year. That's not correct, because this is crunch time right now, and we explained that earlier. We do go after a variety of drugs. And again, it's a famous line from a famous, not really famous, but at least famous to me, a famous city attorney says, if you don't like the code, change the code. Okay? If you don't like the law, change the law, and that's what we're here having a discussion about. I think law enforcement's concern is not whether we're changing the law as much as we're changing how it is regulated and how it is controlled, and that is our position, not necessarily whether or not we're going to call for the question of legalization, because I think we're talking about two things here. Are we talking about medical marijuana, or are we talking about legalizing marijuana? Which, I mean, those are at opposite ends of the spectrum here for me. If it's going to be medicine, then we're going to regulate and control it. If not, then let's call for the question and let's let the voters decide here, because those are two different things in our world. And we do deal with an entire black market that involves a whole assortment of other crimes besides just the manufacture, possession, and distribution of marijuana. Those are crimes. Those are felony crimes in the state. And those involve a whole lot of other issues that go along with that, just like they do with methamphetamine and cocaine and others. And I'm not saying that every marijuana dealer is on the same level as a methamphetamine dealer or a crack cocaine dealer. But what I'm saying is it involves a whole bunch of other crimes, a whole bunch of other circumstances, and I hate the always and nevers, because that's not the system that we work under. It's not, if we just got rid of the marijuana enforcement, legalized marijuana, then life would be rosy and we could go on to bigger and better things. There's going to be another drug, trust me. There'll be something else that will come along, and then we'll have to, and I don't think you can legalize your way out of addiction. I don't think you can legalize your way out of those crimes. And it goes along with the whole sin tax theory that we're going to tax our way out of this problem. And again, probably getting off kilter here a little bit, but I don't think that our argument is whether or not it's going to be legal or not. We're arguing about how we're going to dispense what is termed, and I believe there is a medical need for certain people to have medical marijuana, so to speak. And that's the argument that we're in now. It's not whether or not we're going to legalize marijuana or not, although I think the movement is that direction.
Thank you, sir. Next person in line, please.
Yes, hello. Brad Carrier. I'm 24 years in Ashland. From Michigan. I've been a minister all my life, and everywhere I've talked, I've been for the legalization. But that's my mindset, because my set of experiences regarding marijuana use is entirely positive, and I'm talking about a large number of being with friends who laugh and giggle. John Prine wrote a song about the illegal smile. So I have that kind of a worldview to come from. But I totally respect, especially the policemen here tonight, that come at it with another worldview that we don't have privy to, because you see this, sometimes the scuzzier elements of our society and the problem edges of marijuana, part of which is there because it's so darn lucrative. It ought to be 10 times less than what it's going for right now, and then it would take a lot of the money out of it. So I guess what I'm suggesting here tonight is there's people in the room here tonight that have a lot of experience with it, who would understand that it's really not a danger and a detrimental thing to people like it's being portrayed. And there are people who have only seen the negative, rough edges of this thing, and furthermore are trusted by society to go after the breakers of law. Like you say, it's a yes or a no. But I would suggest to you that your worldview does not give you information about how people don't come to you and say, I enjoy this and nothing bad happens, because you're a policeman, so they're not going to tell you that. And so you would have a limited perspective, and I would further suggest that those of us who can't see why it's persecuted so much also have a limited perspective, because we don't see life from the policeman's eyes, and you don't get to see what you have to encounter. So I'm glad we're having the forum tonight, so there's a little bit more interchange between the sides of society that we're dealing with here. Yes,
Brad,
sir.
thank you. Anybody care to respond up here?
I do have a comment.
Go ahead, Eric.
Let's not differentiate. I mean, there's no expectation for anybody in this crowd to view your position impartially. As a representative of Oregon State Police, as a law enforcement officer up here, I don't get to, my impartial experience, my life experience doesn't, I mean, whether I agree with it or not, isn't my job.
I hear you.
My job is to enforce the law.
Mm-hmm.
My personal experience, I have family members that are participants, okay? So I do understand the perspective. I know people that have realized a benefit, but that's not my job.
Okay.
Okay, so I appreciate your perspective, but you need to understand our perspective.
That's what I'm trying to say here. And I would just like to close by saying that it's regrettable that the war on drugs has divided our community so that we cannot be chummy and honest with our policemen or in other aspects of society. People can't be honest about what they like to do if they're in a vulnerable position, a teacher, firefighter, whatever it is. They all have to lie about it. It's dividing families. It's a horrible thing. So thank you.
Right. Brad, thanks again. And we have a question here from the Mail Tribune folks.
I think this would be for Lee. Essentially, the question is, well, here, I'll just read it. You can figure it out. What's being done about the growers who are taking advantage of the patients and their needs? If some patients complain, then they may be left without a grower. How can we regulate this other than just the dispensaries if passed? Is there, this sounds like if you get on the wrong side of the person who's providing you with the marijuana, you lose your supply.
One of the